Good evening. Welcome to Life in Focus, Tuesday Night Live. It's so good to have you with us tonight. I'm so happy to be connecting with you. And the scene says, what is your story? So what is your story? We talked last week about being born again, about where we're at in our life, where it's good, bad situations. So tonight we're going to continue that theme. So let's get rolling. Okay.
Moses stood on a mountain.
I don't know why that's doing that. Just a minute.
Waiting for you to pass by. You placed your hand over his face.
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry about that. So here we are. We talked last week about being born again, about deliverance from your addiction or your paranoia, your emotions. So tonight we're going to kind of continue that theme, but we want to back up a little bit to the time that you actually started your life, started your story. God said he knew the end from the beginning. So God knows, even though he doesn't interfere with you, he allows you to make your own choices. I want you to understand that God knows what's going to happen. He doesn't make it happen, but he knows the choices you're going to make. So let's dive into that tonight. My belief is, and the way I understand things, is that when you were scheduled to be born with your parents, God prepared your soul to live on this earth. He whispered in your ear, told you your purpose, give you the gifts and the talents that you need to fulfill that purpose that God had designed for you, whether it be to be an engineer, whether it be to be a congressman or a politician or president of the United States. Whatever God had prepared for you, he wanted you to understand that, and he wanted to try to direct you so that you prepared your life to be what he designed you to be. And I wasn't very good at that when I started out. But God takes whatever our experiences are as we're growing up and uses them to get us to the place of what we're designed to be. So let's continue that. Your original birth was by your parents, whoever your parents were. Whether they were good, bad, wonderful parents, parents that were so busy trying to provide for you that they didn't spend a lot of quality time with you, or if you had parents that were very wonderful and that they spent a lot of time with you. So whatever your parenting was, whatever your parents that you were born into, as I said, whether it was wonderful or seemingly a very tragic situation for you. So it was your parents' job to prepare you to live on this planet. Now, it takes certain things to know how to live on this planet. We need to know how to go to school. We need to learn math. We need to learn how to speak well. We need to learn how to write well. And I wasn't a very good student, so I didn't think English was very important. But I wish that I had paid additional attention to that. Math was a wonderful thing for me, and it helped me in my life tremendously. But if I would have learned how to write well and understood those type of things, my life would have went a lot better, because as I got older, then everything changed for me. The seasons changed for me. No longer was I a person that worked with my hands and built buildings and wired buildings and did all those things. Even though I did serve God and do stuff for him, I didn't devote my 100% to him. And that's okay. We all got to make a living. Not everybody's designed to do that. So I did that for 45 years. And then the seasons changed for me, and I started a nonprofit and ministered to people that had addiction issues, substance abuse issues, for about 8 years, and then things changed for me again. So here I am tonight ministering to you. So it's your parents' job, as I said, to prepare you to live in this life. My dad, when I turned 15, and back then you could get your driver's license at 15. I do not know the law anymore, so I can't reference that. But I got my driver's license at 15. My dad had this was in 1962, I believe, and my dad had a 54 Mercury. It was green, chrome-plated interior, beautiful car, and he had bought him a 1959 Oldsmobile. And so he gave me the 1954 Mercury. But he didn't give it to me. He went to Sears and bought a 90-piece socket set, tool kit, and give it to me and told me to rebuild this car, rebuild the engine in this car, and we pulled it in the garage and I was on my own. So I tore it down and started rebuilding it. We had the machining done that needed to be done. But the great thing is that he gave me a tool kit so that I could do that. And I did not understand at that time that what he had given me, the car and the toolkit, was to train me to be able to manage my own transportation. And if my car broke down, I could fix it. So he gave me the tools to do that. He also taught me about life. Okay? Now, my dad was a Pentecostal pastor, so my life was somewhat different than a lot of people, but it was good because I learned about the spiritual things in life. Not only did my parents prepare me to live on this planet, how to work, how to do things, how to rebuild cars, how to have mechanical ability, and all those things he taught me. And then he also taught me about the spiritual things that you need to manage your life on this planet. And he taught me about God, and so I got acquainted with God quite early. Went to church all the time. And I heard a lot of preaching. So the word got into me about God by, you might say, osmosis. So I learned a lot about God, learned a lot about the Bible, learned how to pray, and at 14, I started preaching. Okay? And the first message I preached was a disaster. Okay? I thought I had a lot of it, and I thought I preached a long time, and I preached a whopping 3 minutes. Okay? And then my dad began to teach me how to prepare, how to pray, how to prepare, how to study, and to bring the Word of God to the people. And it was my job as a young minister to learn how to do that, and I received a lot of opportunities to do that. My dad made sure that I was trained in living on this planet with mechanical abilities and how to survive, how to talk to people, how to work, as I said a while ago. But he also taught me how to minister. And so back then we had what we called fellowship meetings. And we would go, Dad would take me to those fellowship meetings. I was 15 and 16 years old. And what they consisted of, there was, say, 5 to 10 churches in a section. And we all met once a month. And every preacher got to talk for around 5 minutes, okay? Some of them talked longer. Then you had someone that brought the final message. And so Dad took me to all those things to learn how to interact with audiences, how to preach, how to prepare, and sometimes I got to bring the final message. And that was a wonderful thing. Sometimes I did well, sometimes I did not. But I always were taught by my dad. So that's the way it is. Our parents were around to teach us about how to live on this planet, And also, some parents, they were not spiritual, so they didn't know how to teach you how to do things about God. So God himself, it said, is our Father, okay? And it said, one God and Father of all, who is above all, who is through all, who is in all. So God himself begins to teach you, maybe you don't really understand that, about spiritual things. And so as we progress through this issue, we're born first with our parents. We don't get to choose our parents, okay? We just get the parents that we're born to, as I said a while ago, some good, some bad, okay? But not everything's all good, not everything's all bad. It's like a railroad track. One track is good, one track is bad. So sometimes you get more bad track, you get good track, and vice versa sometimes. So that's the way God is to you and I. And when you get born again, then your parenting somewhat changes and you become born, God said, as we studied last week, you're born of the water and of the Spirit. Now we know when you're born the first time, you're in your mother's womb, you're in a fluid like water. And when you're born, the water breaks and you're born with the water, okay? So you're somewhat baptized into this planet by the water from your mother's womb, okay? So when you're born again, it's the same situation. God births you, and he births you in the fluid in your mother's womb is to protect you during the time of process when you're being shaped and you're being grown and you become a complete person. Start out with 2 cells and end up as a complete person. That's the way it is with God. He processes you and you are, in a sense, being grown in the process of becoming a complete person in God, and then you're birthed. Okay, you're somewhat helpless. You don't know much. You can't take care of yourself. You don't understand a lot about what it is to be born again. But God told us that if we wanted to see the kingdom of heaven, we had to be born again. Okay? Now I want you to understand that's a process. When God starts dealing with you, or when things begin to happen to you, no matter what you are or where you are spiritually, you need to understand that God is dealing with you. Maybe you don't understand what's going on, but there's something begins to change and you begin to feel something in you that you never felt before. And that's God coming to you with his Spirit, and you're born first in the water. It's not water baptism, but you're born. God protects you during the time of the process of being formed as a new creature, it said, in God. A new person is really what it means. So you're being born during that time and being shaped and becoming a new person in God. And then you're born of the water that God has placed you in to protect you during that time of process. And then when you're born, it says that we're born of the Spirit. So God's Spirit enters into us during that process. Maybe we really don't understand what's happening, but that is what's happening. So God puts his Spirit in us, and then he begins to teach us. He said his Spirit would teach us everything. When you went to school, teachers taught you things. They didn't start out with calculus. And when we went to school, it was a lot slower. You learned a lot more than we did at an earlier age, and that's wonderful. There wasn't any kindergarten. There wasn't any of that. You just started off in the first grade. So, it took me a long time to learn to tell time even. In the second grade, they were teaching us to tell time, and I was maybe dense a little bit, and it took me a while to figure it out. Because I wanted to do it because the teacher would ask you to go out in the hall and look at the clock and come back and tell her what time it was. And I wanted to do that, but it took me a while to learn. Sometimes some of us are slower learners about God than other people. But God has prepared you and designed for you what he wants you to become. Okay? Let's see how much time I have left. A few minutes. Okay, let's look back to a man named Moses. Moses was born to an Israelite lady or Hebrew lady, and they were slaves in the country of Egypt. This was back a couple thousand years ago, about 3,000 years ago or so. And he was born there, and the Egyptians had put out a decree. The king of Egypt, which was called a Pharaoh, had made a law that said that every boy baby that was born was to be thrown into the river and drowned, because the Israelites, the Hebrews, became so plentiful that the Egyptians became scared of them. So they were very harsh with them and very mean, you might say, cruel, malevolent, however you want to say it. So when Moses was born, his mother said, "This child is special." So she hid him for 3 months in her house. And how it was only because of God that he escaped the fate of all the other young lads that were born to their mothers and dads. But his mother did obey the decree, because she made a little basket. She made it waterproof, and she put blankets in it and put it in the river, the Nile River. And during that time, of course, they didn't have bathrooms like we do now, so the princes of the king or the Pharaoh of Egypt come down to bathe in the river with all of her attendants. And when she got in the river, she heard a baby crying. And so she sent her attendants to see where this baby was at, and they found him in this little basket. And this princess, when she saw him, she just fell in love with him. And I'm sure Moses gooed at her. God had all designed all this stuff. So she just fell in love with him, because God wanted this young lad to become a great leader and free the people that were in slaves in Egypt. So she took him as her own son, took him to her palace, and what the ironic thing is, Moses' sister asked the princess if she wanted somebody to help her raise a child while he was an infant, and she said yes. So the princess hired Moses' mother to take care of him. So Moses got the plan of God, and his mother taught him about God, because Abraham, it's a long story, but that's the way it went. So Moses was in the palace for 40 years. He learned he had the best school. He became totally trained so he could become king. The history says that he was a great general for the Egyptian army, won a lot of battles, designed war plans and all that stuff. So he was a great leader. He understood how to lead people. He was a great people person, but he stuttered real bad. So here we see Moses' first 40 years in his life was in the palace. He was raised to become Pharaoh, king of Egypt. But at 40 years old, he was out wandering around and watching the Hebrews as slaves and what was happening, because they were building great buildings for Pharaoh and different things. And he saw one of the Egyptians beating a Hebrew, and it incensed him, and he killed the Egyptian. And then the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting together, and he went to them, and he said, "Why are y'all fighting each other? What is wrong here?" And the guy that started the fight, he said, "Are you going to kill me like you did the Egyptian yesterday?" And so Moses knew that the gig was up. How many have ever got into trouble and you knew, hey, the gig is up? So he had to flee for his life. One of the things about that was there wasn't a lot of people, so he could run away and nobody knew where he was because there wasn't fingerprints, there wasn't all that stuff. So that's all we have time for tonight. I do want to play this song for you before I go away. Hang on a minute and listen.
Moses stood on a mountain, waiting for you to pass by. You placed your hand over his face. In your presence, he wouldn't die. And all Israel saw your glory, and it shines down through the age. Now you've called us to boldly seek your face. Show me your face, Lord. Show me your face. And then gird up my legs, I might stand in this holy place. Show me your face, Lord, your power and your grace. I will make it to the end if I could just see your face. David knew there was something more than the ark of your presence. In a manger, Messiah was born amongst kings and some peasants. And all Israel saw the glory, and it shines down through the age. Now you've called us to boldly seek your face. Show me your face, Lord. Show me your face. And then gird up my legs, I might stand in this holy place. Show me your face, Lord, your power and your grace. And I will make it to the end if I could just see your face. If I could just see your face. Show
Okay, we prayed last week as we left for your deliverance from whatever you're addicted to, or blessings of God upon your life. So would you sing this song with me this next week? Would you ask God to show his face to you, fill you full of his glory? Would you pray that? Would you sing this song? God, show me your face. Show me your grace. Show me your glory. Okay? Father God, as we come to you, finishing up this program tonight, God, we ask you to reach out unto each one that is listening and will listen to this ministry tonight, this podcast. We ask you to touch them in a special way. God, continue to teach them, give them power to overcome their addictions, change their life, make them a new person, take away all the old stuff, make everything in their life new, and walk with them, God, and show them your glory and your grace. We ask in your name. Amen. See you next week at 6 o'clock, Tuesday Night Live.